To be joining GB News. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel, to get your wisdom.
Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Britain's watching.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tonight on Farage, we have the first sit-down interview with the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. The straight-talking Home Secretary, GB News' Liam Halligan, conducted the interview. We show it in a minute here for the first time. When that's done, Jamie Balch, Olympic silver medalist at the 400 metres, joins me to talk about a life in sport, but perhaps even more importantly, about kids in care and adoption and what's going wrong in this country today. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you. Good evening to you. The top story tonight on GB News. The Defence Secretary says Challenger 2 battle tanks could arrive in Ukraine by the spring. Ben Wallace made the comments during a visit to a British Army base in Dorset, where Ukrainian soldiers are training on standard British tanks. The UK has already promised to send 14 to Ukraine, but Mr Wallace says Britain could offer up additional tanks, depending on the threat level and the country's defence needs. Here, the Prime Minister has said he'll deliver certainty, stability and clarity as he seeks a deal on post-Brexit arrangements in Northern Ireland. Rishi Sunak held talks with Northern Irish business leaders today as he faced renewed pressure to achieve a workable solution to the stalled protocol. Earlier, Mr Sunak told the Commons intensive talks with the EU are ongoing.
I am a Conservative, a Brexiter and a Unionist, and any agreement that we reach needs to tick all three boxes. It needs to ensure sovereignty for Northern Ireland, it needs to safeguard Northern Ireland's place in our union, and it needs to find practical solutions to the problems faced by people and businesses. I will be resolute in fighting for what is best for Northern Ireland and the United Kingdom.
Lancashire Police says it welcomes the forthcoming independent review into its handling of the Nicola Bulley case to be conducted by the College of Policing. It's going to focus on the investigation and on the search, as well as the release of personal information about Nicola Bulley and Lancashire Police's overall communications strategy with the public. Separately, the police regulator has launched an investigation into a welfare check carried out on Miss Bully just weeks before she went missing. Her body was recovered from the River Wire on Sunday, more than 3 weeks after she disappeared. Consumer news, and Tesco is the latest supermarket to introduce a limit on how much fresh produce customers can buy, as fruit and vegetable shortages are leaving shelves bare. The retailing giant joins Aldi, Asda and Morrisons in temporarily rationing shopping, with purchases of tomatoes, peppers and cucumbers limited to 3 per customer as a precaution. Bad weather and transport problems across Europe and North Africa are being blamed for disruption to supply chains, and retailers are warning the problems could last for a few weeks. Lastly, His Majesty the King has held an audience with the President of the German Parliament ahead of a trip to Germany later this month. King Charles will become the first British monarch to address the Bundestag during a state visit to the country, welcomed Barbel Bus to Buckingham Palace this afternoon. The trip will follow on from a state visit to France with the Queen Consort at the end of March, which is due to be King Charles's first official trip abroad since his accession to the throne. Those are your latest news headlines. You are up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News, the People's Channel. Time for Farage.
Good evening. Well, we're very pleased tonight to bring you the first full sit-down television interview with our Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, and it was conducted by Liam Halligan, GB News' economics editor. He joins me now. Liam, you covered a wide range of subjects. What were the ones that really stood out?
Well, it's great to be a guest on the show, Nigel. Talking about this interview, it was her first sit-down TV interview. It was a 25-minute encounter conducted in the Home Office, in her own office, went through lots of security protocol and all the rest of it. GB News viewers can watch the whole thing on our YouTube channel and on our app, but we're looking at the main parts here tonight and we're going to be discussing them. I think the first thing that we spoke about was the small boats and immigration problem, which of course is a major issue, and for many people watching GB News, viewers and listeners, it will be the issue upon which they judge the Conservative government.
Yep, and the Red Wall and much of the rest of the country. Let's have a look at Liam and Suella Braverman on the boats.
Home Secretary, over 45,000 people crossed the Channel in small boats last year. The number this year is expected to be a lot higher. Rishi Sunak, in his own words, is committed to passing new laws to stop the small boats. Those laws have now been laid before Parliament. Does that mean that the government's ruled out leaving the European Convention on Human Rights in order to try and tackle this vexed problem? Because you've previously advocated that we should.
Well, I'd say nothing's ruled out at the moment, and we are in the process of preparing our bill to be introduced into Parliament very soon. And my personal views are well known. What I want to deliver is a system whereby if you arrive here illegally, you'll be detained and thereafter swiftly removed. And if we can deliver that system and that framework, then we shouldn't need to leave the ECHR.
You'll know that British lawyers and MPs drafted the European Convention of Human Rights in the shadow of World War II. We were the first country to ratify it. Leaving it would mean only the UK plus Belarus and Russia in the Council of Europe were outside the ECHR. Would that be OK?
Well, I think that there are legitimate questions that we need to start asking relating to our membership of the European Convention of Human Rights and its operation in the United Kingdom. We've seen there's a politicised and expansionist court in Strasbourg that regulates the convention, sometimes at odds with British values, whether it's our ability to remove people to Rwanda, as we saw last year. The European Court on Human Rights intervened at the 11th hour to stop us from doing that, whether it's our ability to deport foreign paedophiles, whether it's our ability to police protests, whether it's the issue on resolving the issue of Northern Ireland legacy claims or legal claims brought against our own soldiers who fought in Iraq. In many instances of policy making, the Human Rights Act, what I call is part of the long tail of Blairism, its operation combined with the ECHR and the court have operated to stymie policy making.
You make a strong legal case with respect to Home Secretary, but the optics of leaving the ECHR are difficult. You've got the stomach to leave it, clearly. Has the Prime Minister?
At this stage, nothing's ruled out. We need to ensure that we fix this problem of illegal migration. That's my priority. And as the Prime Minister himself has said, he'll do whatever it takes to achieve that goal. We've had 45,000 people last year arrive here illegally on small boats. That situation is unacceptable. We need to design a robust framework. We need to have a deterrent so people stop making the journey in the first place, and we have to do whatever it takes to ensure that we can deliver that.
In light of those small boat incidents, we've seen protests now around the country, increasingly in Liverpool, in Rotherham, protests planned in Newquay, in the West Country. Some have been calling in the media those protesters against asylum seekers, perhaps some people would call them illegal immigrants, others would call them. Some have said that those protesters are far right. Is that a fair characterisation of those protesters?
Well, what I would say firstly is that violence is never acceptable, and intimidation, harassment, any forms of abuse to anybody are totally should be condemned, and I condemn them in the fullest possible terms. And it's clear that we have an unsustainable situation in towns and cities around our country, whereby, because of the overwhelming numbers of people arriving here illegally and our legal duties to accommodate them, we are now having to house them in hotels. And that is causing understandable tensions within communities, pressures on local resources, and is frankly unsustainable.
So you support those protesters?
I very much understand people's frustrations with hotels being occupied by large numbers of illegal immigrants or asylum seekers.
So what do you make of a leader of a council in Cornwall calling such protesters who are planning a protest in Newquay abhorrent racists and bigots? Is that fair?
As I said, I think anyone contemplating violence, harassment or intimidation should desist from doing that. It is not an acceptable way to voice your concerns or frustrations. We are all frustrated with the situation that we are currently finding ourselves in, and you know, it is clear and undeniable that there are really serious pressures on communities, and saying so does not make you racist or bigoted.
You're from the background that you're from, Home Secretary. Do you think our political and media class more generally understand the strength of feeling about this small boats illegal immigration issue, particularly among migrant communities here in the UK who've adhered to the rules over generations?
Well, this is the other angle to this problem. The fact that there are tens of thousands of people coming here illegally is unacceptable because they're jumping the queue and they are undermining our ability to support those people who are coming here legitimately as refugees or as asylum seekers. It is actually inhibiting our ability to provide sanctuary to those people who are coming here lawfully. It is also a serious undermining of our laws and our arrangements that we have when it comes to controlling our borders. It's incumbent on any government to control their borders, and we must ensure that we do that more robustly in the future.
Liam, I don't doubt her sincerity for one moment. You know, she wants to stop this from happening, as indeed did Priti Patel, who was the Home Secretary before her. Do you get the sense, you know, you asked her, does the Prime Minister have the stomach to leave the ECHR? She didn't say no, but she kind of intimated that it's no. Am I wrong about that?
Well, Suella Braverman, of course, when she was campaigning to be Conservative leader, and she did pretty well in that contest, she said that we may need to leave the ECHR.
Well, I tell you what, let's be specific about that. This is exactly what Suella said on this issue during the leadership campaign. And for those watching on television, you can read it on the screen. For those not, I'm going to read it out anyway. We have a long, proud history of respecting human rights in this country, but the ECHR has become a political court which is thwarting our democracy. If any of the candidates are serious about tackling illegal immigration and fully taking back control of our borders, they must also commit to leave it. Now, I've got to tell you, Liam, when she said that, I said if I was a Conservative MP, she's the one I'd vote for. Is it fair to say that the responsibilities of office and collective cabinet responsibility too have softened her position a bit?
Well, let me unpack the way I see it, Nigel. You could say that, and some of her opponents will say that. The way I see it is this. She's a lawyer. She understands jeopardy. She understands negotiations. Now, the ECHR is enforced by the court in Strasbourg. It was the court in Strasbourg, the appeal to that, which stopped those planes taking off to Rwanda, which stymies all kinds of other issues, as Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, explained in that last clip. I think the reason she wants to keep the option of leaving the ECHR on the table, even though a lot of the chattering classes, the great and the good, would find that abhorrent, is because she knows that there is laws that are being laid before Parliament now, as I mentioned, that the government is putting forward, which toughen up our ability as a country to deport people who have arrived here illegally, right? Now, if you put those laws through the Commons, and they would get through the Commons, not least because most Conservatives would back them.
And there's a majority.
Yeah, and some Red Wall Labour MPs would also back them, by the way. She knows there will be a row with that ermine-clad chamber, the House of Lords, and a lot of sort of metropolitan-based lawyers who wouldn't like any kind of tightening up of our immigration system, frankly. So she wants to leave the option of keep the option of leaving the ECHR on the table, to not rule it out, I think, in order to say to the Lords, look, we've got a choice here. Either you accept what we're doing as the elected chamber and the government, or we're just going to leave the ECHR.
I understand that, but leaving the option on the table is different to must commit to leaving.
Well, to commit to do something is to say you will do it if you need to do it, right?
Yep.
I mean, this is the way politics works.
Well, I tell you what, if Rishi Sunak said it, I might believe it. I think she's in a minority position in the cabinet on this particular issue.
I think she may be, because I think even the Prime Minister knows that if he goes for leaving the ECHR belt and braces,
civil war in the Tory party.
There is going to be civil war in the Tory party. You know, the vast majority of the left-wing press, the broadcast media will say, "Oh my God, this is completely abhorrent." The ECHR was drafted by British lawyers, as I said. It was literally a response to World War II, a response to the Holocaust, and all those ghastly human horrors. What Suella Braverman is saying is that the UK has an incredible track record of upholding human rights in its own right, and that the ECHR has, since those dark days, but days of hope after the Second War,
as a political court,
become, as she has said, expansionist and obstructionist.
No, I agree with her completely. In a moment, the big news of this week. Could there be cabinet resignations over Rishi Sunak's deal on Northern Ireland? Could Suella Braverman be one of them? Back with you in 2 minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, the hottest political story of the week is Rishi Sunak's impending deal with the European Commission. What will it mean for trade between the mainland and Northern Ireland? Will the European Court of Justice still have some sway? Will cabinet ministers resign? Well, top of the resignation watch list probably is the Home Secretary, Liam.
This is why the whole of Westminster wanted this interview. GB News has scooped them because the Home Secretary is top of that resignation watch list. She has very strong views on the importance of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland being overseen by British courts, not Northern Ireland itself being overseen by the European Court of Justice, which in her view has become a very politicised court. It's very much driven by politicians rather than by judges. Suella Braverman, I think, has come to the view that she needs to put a little bit of pressure on the Prime Minister, and that is what she's done in the clip that's to come.
Let's have a look.
You've called the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, quotes, one of the biggest tools we have in dealing with the EU over the issue of the Northern Ireland border. What did you mean by that? What would we use that tool for?
Well, there are problems with the operation of the protocol right now. And that is clear for everyone to see. There are problems with trade across the Irish Sea within the UK internal market. There are problems with a democratic deficit, that being that Northern Ireland is still on the receiving end of hundreds of laws being passed at the EU level and applying in Northern Ireland. And there are problems with the delivery of public services in Northern Ireland because of an executive which is not functioning. Now, all of those problems need fixing. I believe that the proposed legislation that the government introduced...
That allows ministers to avoid parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol as it stands.
Yes, is an important tool in fixing some of the issues that I've just talked about.
Doesn't it up the ante? Doesn't it make a deal with the EU tougher?
No, I actually think if you look historically at how our deals and agreements have been reached with the EU, it's important that we take a robust approach. We need to, my clear preference is for us to reach a workable and pragmatic agreement with the EU. I know that the Prime Minister shares that objective, and I know that he's working flat out to reach such an agreement whilst not compromising on our sovereignty or on the place of Northern Ireland inside the United Kingdom.
But that protocol bill, as you say, a vital negotiating tool, is languishing in the Lords. The word on the street is that Number 10's abandoned it.
That's not my perception. I know that the Prime Minister is absolutely committed to resolving this issue, regardless of the implications. It's absolutely essential that we get Stormont back up and functioning, that we restore free-flowing trade across the Irish Sea, so that businesses in Northern Ireland and Great Britain can carry out their commercial activities, but also that Northern Ireland's place within the UK is safeguarded.
Simon Clarke, former Cabinet Minister, has said there will be a very real problem for the government if there is a Northern Ireland deal that doesn't carry the support of the DUP. Is he right?
Listen, the DUP are an important voice in this debate and in this discussion. They speak.
Can we have a deal that they don't agree to?
We have always worked very closely with the DUP. They are unionists. They speak for a significant portion of the communities in Northern Ireland, and they need to be round the table. Ultimately, Stormont will only function if the DUP supports any proposal.
You resigned, of course, as a Brexit minister in 2018 over Theresa May's deal. Would you resign over this?
Listen, I don't think we need to be talking about resignation. I've taken a very forthright position in the past because I've found the terms of previous agreements intolerable. I don't support selling out on Northern Ireland and allowing the EU a foothold in the United Kingdom. It's absolutely vital that we safeguard what we've gained from the Brexit vote, that we go forward as a United Kingdom where the integrity of our union is safeguarded and we properly take back control. And I know the Prime Minister shares that objective.
Well, Liam, I have to say, that's quite a veiled threat there, isn't there? I have resigned in the past on deals that I have found to be unacceptable, and she'll be referring directly back to that post-Chequers period. So logic would say, if that's how she feels as a politician, and we haven't seen the full details yet of what Rishi Sunak is going to present, we think, in the next few days, I'm guessing that the Sunak calculation is that the Eurosceptics on the backbenches have been reduced to a rump, and I think his calculation would be that nobody in Cabinet will actually resign over this. What do you think?
It's a big risk. Rishi Sunak came under pressure at PMQs today to talk more about the particular deal he's meant to have done with the European Commission over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Suella Braverman there, she did, of course, resign in 2018, specifically on this issue when she was a Brexit minister. She also is a bit of a standard bearer for not just the European Research Group, but other Conservative backbenchers who feel that the European Union simply shouldn't have any sway over Northern Ireland by having the European Court of Justice overseeing rules that govern Northern Ireland, and no one in Northern Ireland has any say over those rules. There will literally be taxation without representation. And when that happened in Boston, they threw a lot of tea into the river.
and a lot of them Irish born, too. I mean, to Sunak, it appears to me what he's trying to negotiate is something that makes trade easier between the mainland and Northern Ireland, hence this concept of a green lane that goods can go through. But really what she's saying, I think, is that at the heart of this, it is a constitutional issue.
This is jurisprudence. She's a trained lawyer. She's a barrister. She passed the bar exam in New York as well. This is what she does. And she is offended constitutionally that post-Brexit, part of the UK, Northern Ireland, is still governed, overseen by, you know, a court based overseas for which there's no democratic accountability. And these green lanes, are they really green? They seem to be pretty pinkish to me, because there'll still be checks in the green lane as well. And I think in the hearts of many people on the backbenches, there's this sense that this whole issue of the Northern Ireland border, not to take anything away from the sensitivities of putting infrastructure on the border and not having an invisible border across the island of Ireland, but they think the whole issue, whether it was the backstop, now the Northern Ireland Protocol, is a bit of a contrived hoax, because that border across the island of Ireland, 320 miles, twisty, goes through farms, it goes through living rooms. It's invisible. It's been invisible for a long time, you know, thank heavens. Since the Good Friday Agreement, there's been so much less tension. It's already been for years a VAT border, a customs border, a nationality border,
currency border.
Yeah, currency border. You don't need any infrastructure on the border. You don't need to have a border in the middle of the Irish Sea. You just need a little bit of give and take between the UK and the Republic of Ireland. Give and take, which was there, by the way, under the original Taoiseach, Enda Kenny. But once the EU got its talons into this issue, it caused a lot of trouble.
This was Monsieur Barnier's poison
Exactly.
pill, and Theresa May chose to swallow the poison
I don't think, with all respect to the former Prime Minister, really understood the intricacies of the issue. And I'm beginning to feel that the Prime Minister is just taking his brief from his officials, many of whom want to keep part of the UK very much under Europe's auspices in order to prevent any diversion between the various regulatory
and
regimes.
let's face it, most of the civil service would actually like the whole of the UK to start aligning with single market rules. Liam, this woman, she's 42 years old. She's not been in Parliament very long.
2015.
She's climbed the ladder. She now holds one of the 4 great offices of state. Is she really going to resign that position because she thinks Rishi's done a bad deal?
Well, if she feels that, if she calculates, I can't speak for her, obviously, she's given her own piece, pretty measured but quite tactical form of words, I think, that she used there. I think you'll agree as a professional politician.
But it was a veiled threat.
Yeah, absolutely. She didn't need to mention that she'd resigned in the past when she found the terms of deals intolerable. Quite. She didn't need to mention the endless ways which, in her view, Northern Ireland is ill-served by being outside the legal auspices for ECJ purposes of the rest of the United Kingdom. She didn't need to do it in that way at this moment. She didn't need to give me this interview right now when she knows this issue is front and centre of the Parliament, of the Prime Minister's inbox. Right?
I tell you what, Liam, Number 10 are watching this as we speak. They'll be going absolutely potty. In a moment, we're going to find out who Suella Braverman really is, what her motivations are, and what that may tell us about her role in British public life in the many years to come.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel. Well, Suella Braverman has not been in public life very long, and we really don't know much about her as a person. But I think, Liam Halligan, we're about to find out.
Indeed, this is really why I wanted to do this interview, because this was a person who I saw her getting a lot of flack from the mainstream media, lots of opprobrium thrown in her face. No one really knew who she was. I know a little bit about who she is because we grew up in the same pretty nondescript part of northwest London, not an affluent place at all, but a very aspirational place. When I was growing up there, it was full of working class Irish, Jewish, Cypriot families, a lot of Asian families as I was getting older, including indeed Suella Braverman's family moving there. And when I spoke to her in the Home Office interview, this is GB News exclusive, Nigel, I asked her what it was about her immigrant background. Her parents of Indian origin came respectively from Mauritius and from Kenya. What it was about her immigrant background that made her not just a lawyer, but then made her also a Conservative. Here she is.
It's my family background that has made me a Conservative. My parents admired this country hugely when they were children, growing up under the British Empire, before the winds of change in Mauritius and Kenya, as you mentioned. And they saw what Britain brought to the world during World War II, through its contribution to Mauritius and Kenya infrastructure, the legal system, language, the civil service. And then, as young adults, they came here and were incredibly grateful for the welcome that Britain offered them. My mother was recruited at the age of 18 by the NHS, and she thereafter worked for 45 years as a nurse here. And she's always been very proud of working for the NHS and working in Britain. My father came here for different reasons. He was effectively kicked out from Kenya. And he often tells me about the cold February morning in 1968 when he stepped off the plane at Heathrow Airport with no money and no one with him. And it was Britain and his British passport that was his symbol of hope. So I think my parents' background has really informed my appreciation and love of Britain and British values.
Do we take that for granted too often? Do too many politicians take for granted what Britain is and what it represents in terms of opportunity, freedom, rule of law?
I think there is a tendency to apologise for what Britain did for the world historically and be a bit shy about our greatness looking forward. I'm very optimistic about our future. I believe in the genius of Britain, what Britain has brought to civilization, to culture, to science, to statecraft, and I believe those are great foundations which will set us up well for the future, but also are emulated around the world. But I'm also a Conservative because of personal experiences. My father actually was unemployed for some years during the 1990s, and that was for me a life-changing experience. It taught me values of hard work, personal responsibility, aspiration, and I think the combination of being proud of Britain and our traditions and the value of aspiration and hard work have made me a Conservative.
From that humble background, of course, you won a place at Cambridge, you read law, you've passed the bar exam in New York as well. How does your legal training make you the politician that you are today?
You're right. I'm very grateful for the excellent education that I had, and studying and practicing law has really informed my politics. I think when you work in the justice system, you work with a variety of people. I specialised originally in planning and town and country planning law, helping people and local authorities on development issues. I thereafter represented the government as part of the Treasury Council panel, defending the Home Office in immigration and asylum cases. And I think my legal experience as a barrister really informed my politics.
Last question, if I may, Home Secretary. You've come in for a lot of abuse, I think it's fair to say. The press often attacks you. Do you like being Home Secretary?
Well, it's an enormous responsibility, requiring an unrelenting amount of work. And you see firsthand and very close up the serious risks that we face every day, whether it's from a law enforcement point of view and what our police do, the security services and what our agencies do, terrorism threat, the issues relating to migration. And actually, I am more focused on protecting the British people and ensuring that we equip our agencies against the terror threat, that we ensure that we fix illegal migration and that our police are serving the public well.
It must be tough, though. You're a human being. A lot of opprobrium is thrown on you, as it was, in fairness, on Priti Patel, one of your predecessors, because you are standing up for issues that an awful lot of ordinary people feel strongly about. Doesn't it get lonely?
Well, I see my role as telling the truth and then fixing the problem. And sometimes the truth is uncomfortable for some people, and they might get upset by hearing the truth. I'm not going to shy away from telling the truth to the British people and for the British people. That's my role as Home Secretary.
Well, I have to say, I learned a heck of a lot there about Suella Braverman I didn't know about before. Maybe she's not quite the monster that she's portrayed to be in the cartoons and everything else. She's clearly very bright.
She is very bright. She is somebody from a pretty humble background, not a moneyed background at all. Yes, she's got a Cambridge education, but that's because, you know, she is the embodiment in many ways of the British dream. You know, I relate to her in some way as somebody from immigrant stock myself, and I know many GB News viewers and listeners will, who through education, through the opportunities that Britain gave my family, like her family, she has made good and become Home Secretary. And I think, yeah, she does have these views that will resonate with a lot of, frankly, blue-collar, lower-middle-class Brits, the kind of people, the alarm clock classes, people who get up early in the morning and make the economy work.
What? I thought everyone worked from home these days. Oh, no, that's the public sector, sorry.
And the views aren't fashionable with the bien pensant, with the great and the good. But among the silent majority of British people, I do think they will resonate. And that's why Rishi Sunak has to tread really, really carefully, because he does not have those blue-collar proletariat credentials that I think she has. Like, I'm not going to over-egg this. I'm not saying that she grew up in poverty in any way, but I do know exactly where she grew up. It was not an affluent area at all. She won a scholarship to an independent school.
Yeah.
And that, for her and her family, that was a source of huge pride.
And these beliefs,
and a platform for greater things.
These beliefs they seem very strong.
They do seem very strong. They do seem strong and genuine.
She looks like a conviction.
Now, I've just seen that the BBC, God bless them, have put they've had to follow up our interview through gritted teeth. They just put a headline out saying that Suella Braverman has played down resignation expectations. That's not, you know, cabinet ministers don't give interviews to hairy blokes like me at times like this when they're playing down their resignation dangers. I'm not saying that she was overly aggressive to the Prime Minister. I would say there that she was marking the Prime Minister's card, and that's why I think this interview will be very, very widely noticed across Westminster and the country as a whole, because she is saying on both small boats we need to have the ECHR as an option, and on the Northern Ireland Protocol we need to keep this protocol bill as an option. We need to get it through so we can withdraw and remove ourselves from this EU deal if we need to. as a lawyer, someone trained in negotiation, she wants to have these options available, however uncomfortable that may make the Prime Minister.
Yeah, and you can't negotiate without a threat.
Absolutely.
Of some kind, and she gets that. It's a pity with Northern Ireland that Theresa May didn't. Well, we go right back to the beginning of these problems. How impressed by her are you?
I don't think it's my job as a journalist to be impressed by politicians. I'm here to judge and see how coherent they are and to ask them quite tough questions,
All
which
right.
I think that was not a soft ball interview.
All right, I'll change the question. How coherent is she? How well thought through is she? You've interviewed dozens of people, scores of people, hundreds of people in business and politics over, a long career.
Thanks for that.
How does she rate?
I think she is coherent, and I think she's got real conviction. And again, that will make a lot of people in the political world and the media world uncomfortable because her convictions aren't their convictions, but her convictions are a lot more widely held than a lot of our, frankly, out-of-touch media understand. And in that sense, I think she has got a bit of a trump card up her sleeve. She's also got a lot of people on the Tory backbenches watching very, very closely. Look, if Rishi Sunak doesn't get this Northern Ireland deal right, this is not semantics. This is really serious. This could be fatal, actually, for his premiership. If we've seen how volatile the Tory backbenchers can be, we know they only need 15% of their number in order to spark, crikey, another leadership election. If they feel that they're not being listened to, then there's no reason why at least some of them won't act. And it's the kind of catalytic event, like a senior member of the government resigning, whether it's Suella Braverman or not. The chances are it probably won't be. But the threat is there, and it will certainly be focusing the Prime Minister's mind this evening.
Liam Halligan, well done. Very good job in getting an interview. There was that veiled political threat. We learned a lot more about Suella as a person. I think my take on it is that she genuinely does hold those convictions, and that's unlike many people in the upper echelons of the Conservative Party today. I think she's got a very important future role to play, certainly within the Conservative Party. But if after a crushing election loss next year, the Conservative Party within the next 18 months cannot rediscover itself as a Conservative Party, I still think there's a possibility that by 2026 there is a realignment of the centre-right in British politics. And if there is, I think she could be just about the most important player in it. That's my take. In a moment, Talking Pints with Jamie Balch. Now, he won a silver medal in the 400 metres in the Olympics, but interestingly, he was adopted, and he's got a heck of a lot to say about too many children in care in this country today who should be out with families. Join me on that in a couple of minutes.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the people's channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the people's channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
The GB News Tavern has been declared open. It's time for Talking Pints. I'm joined by Jamie Bulch, athlete, or I suppose former athlete, really, but cheers.
Cheers, thank you. That's right, and drink this, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess as an athlete, life's pretty tough in terms of what you can do with your social life, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, you know, I used to be trained by Colin Jackson, so he was a serious taskmaster, so no Guinness for me. No Guinness for me. No Guinness for me.
Now, Jamie, you were adopted, and we'll come back to that, and you grew up in Risca.
That's right, yeah.
In South Wales.
Yeah.
Not a bad place to grow up.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. It was just such a great rural, almost, environment. Yeah. Very nice, chilled out. My parents had a big farmhouse, so I did a lot of running around that when I was a kid. I got 2 sisters and 1 brother, and it was a magical childhood, yeah.
I think South Wales is underestimated.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of it that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Property's reasonably priced compared to the southeast of London and all the rest of it. And I mean, a great place to grow up. And of course, I guess rugby was the sport you were encouraged to play.
Oh, yeah, undoubtedly. You know, rugby is still on everyone's lips in that country. So, yeah, I grew up watching it. My dad shouting at the TV, you know, willing Wales to win, and especially in the 70s. And, yeah, so I got into that when I first started and absolutely loved it.
So you will be supporting Wales this weekend?
Oh, obviously, yes. Yes, obviously. I was born in England, which I shouldn't have said, but I was born in England. But I'm definitely Welsh, and I've got red blood, so I'm definitely Welsh.
Absolutely. Now, what is it with the young Jamie that makes him decide? I mean, were you good at all sports?
Yeah, I was actually. I was one of those kids which was really annoying in school. You know, give me a ball, give me a tennis ball, swim, run, hockey, cycle, whatever it was. The only sport I was useless at is football.
Which is extraordinary.
I don't know. Even now, I just
think of the money you could have made.
I know. My dad's like, come on, son, you'll do it. Yeah.
But it was athletics. That was what the love. And at what age do you decide, this is it, I'm going to go for it?
Well, I started when I was 11 years old, doing the sport in sports day, winning sports day, running twice as fast as every kid in the whole school. And my headmaster, Mr. Atkins, unfortunately he's passed away now, he said, you should join a running club. That's what started me. But when I knew I was going to sort of get to that next level was when I was about 17. Got to the World Juniors with Darren Campbell, who went on to win an Olympic gold medal, and came 4th in the 200 metres behind Darren Campbell and Atul Bolden. And we won the relay 4x100. So I started off doing a sort of different.
I'm going to ask you, how does somebody who's running in 100 suddenly become really rather good at 400?
Well, it was a bit of an accident, to be honest with you.
They're very different skills, aren't they?
Totally. One's a Ferrari and one's a 4x4 Jeep. You know, what you've got to have a lot of engine room to be a 400-metre runner. And I did it by accident. I was doing a British League many moons ago now, a long time ago, and a guy called Adrian Thomas, who was a British coach, he said, if you run really well in this race, in this relay race, in Cardiff, nobody watching, we'll consider you to run for Britain in the European Champs. I pretty much ran one of the fastest legs that year in the country. And from that moment on, they were like, ooh, we'll enter you in some 400-metre running races. And that was it, really.
And you went on, Jamie, you won a bucket full of medals in a whole, and of course an Olympic silver that you got in '96 in Atlanta, but you won all sorts of medals and awards and everything else. And I mean, what was the highlight of your career?
I would say it's two really. It's never a one-off. Like winning the World Championships in 1999, you know, being adopted, to ring my father that day and say, Dad, your son is world champion. That was a nice moment in my life, a personal moment. But Olympics, you know, being on the rostrum with those four boys.
It's got to be pretty cool.
Olympics is the way.
Yeah, it's got to be pretty cool. Now, there was something in you, Jamie, and this is interesting. You know, some people who are adopted say, that's fine, great, I'm happy with life.
Yeah.
Others say, yes, I'm happy with life, but I need to find out.
Yeah.
And your desire
to
find out your natural birth parentage led to a couple of BBC documentaries. I mean, you really opened your soul up to the world doing this. Quite a risky thing to do, wasn't it?
It was, and it weren't that long ago. It was in the last, 6-7 years I did it. And the reason I did it is I've got children now. In fact, I'm a granddad now. You know, I can't believe I'm a granddad, but which I love, by the way. But when you have two kids and you don't really know your heritage, and you suddenly realise, hang on, I'm getting older, and you just want to know a little bit more, and you suddenly go, ooh, you know, I've had an amazing upbringing. Everyone who knows my mum and dad, my brother, sister, we've got a real tight family. My mum and dad are still around, which is amazing. But I just want to know. I didn't want to be, on my deathbed or, having a gravestone.
So
and
you
not
wanted to know, but you thought I'll bring a BBC camera with me on the journey.
Yeah, that was a bit full on. That was very full on.
But you did find.
I did find my mother.
Your birth mother.
Yeah, I found my mum, and that was really interesting. Lovely lady. We had some really special moments. Unfortunately, she had cancer when I met her. She was only due to have 6 months to live, but she lived for another 2 years. So we really got to know each other. And she's great. She was great. But in saying that, I was still really happy to be raised by my mum and dad.
Yeah. And you tried to find
my father. Yeah.
And that
didn't pan out. We didn't find him. We thought we had a couple of leads, but it just didn't happen. Met somebody who I thought could be my dad, but he's not him.
I'm guessing, Jamie, for some people, this must be quite a risky journey.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, it's very risky. I mean, you hear of some horror stories where, you could have the door slammed in your face, the husband doesn't know, it's so that you've got siblings, it's some really, if anyone's going to do it, go down the professional channel, which I did. Yes, I did it on TV, but I went through all the right connections, went through the right regimes, and that was the best thing for me.
Now, you've developed this into charitable work, and you've got some pretty strong views about the number of kids in care in this country today.
Yeah.
But it's become quite difficult to adopt, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's all this red tape, You think now it would be easier than what it was back in the 70s. I mean, I'm a mixed race kid, and my mum and dad are white, and they could just adopt me quite comfortably back then. But now it's far more red tape, and, there's so many kids in homes, and the longer they're in homes, the more difficult they're hard
So the race issue comes into adoptions?
Oh, big time, yeah. Yeah. In all, not just race, but all different.
And this is the tick boxes, rather than worry about the welfare of the kid.
Yeah, and if you don't meet that criteria, then you're not going to be a parent, to that adopted child, which is needed, and it's urgent. Mum and dad, I definitely wouldn't be an Olympic silver medalist, and I definitely wouldn't be a world champion. I know it's because of them why I am who I am.
You seem very content in life.
Oh, extremely.
But your running's not that good. Because you try to run against a horse. And we're going to show our TV viewers, Jamie Balch decided he'd try and do Jesse Owens.
Let me finish this.
Famously ran against the horse. Let's see how Jamie Balch got on running against a horse.
Oh, gosh.
I don't...
Stand by. And they're racing. And Jamie is he's about 10 lengths in front here, but rocketing home Peebles Brook and goes to the line in a canter. So a very easy winner as horse beats man here at Kempton Park.
I thought it was only going to be a couple of people down there. That horse was a horse called Peebles Brook who had won everything. You know what I mean? He was like a proper thoroughbred. And I got there, it was like 3,000 people. So I was like, it was on TV.
Well,
I was thinking, thank you very much.
Jamie Balch, I want to say to you, congratulations on a hugely successful career.
Cheers.
On being as happy with life as you are. And all I can say, and honestly, and I mean this, is please keep publicising.
Yeah.
There are too many kids in homes when there are plenty of good families out there that would love to adopt them. And I think you're a very valuable and important role model in that. I thank you for coming on Talking Pints.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
So tomorrow, I'm going to be back on the road with a live audience, and we are going to be in the capital of the West Country. Yes, we're going to be in Exeter. And we'll talk about issues that affect Exeter but affect the country too. One of them, of course, is farming. Neil Parish, that disgraced Member of Parliament, well, he hasn't gone away from public life. He'll be on the programme tomorrow evening, a live audience. I'll see you there. I might even talk about Tony Blair and his plan for digital IDs. I'll see you tomorrow. Bev Turner coming up in a minute.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness. And then for the last 15 minutes, Talking Pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes back on the TV with me this